Greetings and thank you for being here. I'm truly honored you've chosen to spend time watching this video today. If you choose to subscribe to my channel, that support would mean the world to me. Now, let's get into the story I'm here to tell. I'm Alan. When you hear your fiancé unlocking the front door at 3 in the morning, it's supposed to be a reassuring sound, a signal that the person you love is finally home safe. But for me, that sound marked the beginning of a night that would unravel my world. It was the night everything fell apart, just 4 months before our wedding day. Jennifer and I had been together for 3 years when I proposed. Those years felt like a solid foundation, years that seemed to promise a future built on love, trust, and shared goals. Our first meeting happened in a coffee shop downtown. She was seated by the window, grading what looked like a stack of papers. Jennifer was a fourth-grade teacher at Lincoln Elementary. I broke the ice by complimenting her neatly organized, color-coded gradebook. That moment sparked something real between us, something I believed would stand the test of time. From the outset, everything about our relationship felt right. We were aligned on so many important things: family, career paths, and the kind of life we envisioned. Jennifer was intelligent, kind-hearted, and had this laugh that made even my worst days on the construction site feel lighter. I was a project supervisor at a residential construction company, working long and irregular hours that had strained past relationships. But Jennifer was different. She never once made me feel guilty about my schedule. She accepted it with grace. She went out of her way to show support, packing me lunches on days I was bouncing between job sites, sending encouraging messages when I was buried in deadlines, and patiently listening when I vented about job site setbacks or contractor issues. Her care never felt forced. It was effortless and sincere. So, on the 3rd anniversary of our first date, I got down on one knee in the same coffee shop where we first met. Her tearful, excited yes felt like the start of the rest of our lives. We picked a spring wedding date, just far enough away to plan properly, but close enough to feel real. The time following our engagement felt almost surreal in its happiness. We'd spend evenings planning our future, combing through real estate listings, dreaming about what our life would look like together. Jennifer threw herself into wedding prep with the same meticulous energy she brought to her classroom. She created spreadsheets, to-do lists, and perfectly organized timelines to keep everything on track. We had agreed to continue living in our own places until after the wedding. Jennifer's cozy home in the Riverside district was ideal for one person and close to her job, while my apartment downtown suited my work life and routines. Rather than rush into combining our lives logistically, we figured we'd wait until we were officially married. This arrangement made sense for us. It helped us cut down on expenses, allowing us to put more toward the wedding and our future home. That dream home had become a central focus. We were hunting for something with 3 bedrooms, a garage, and a neighborhood where we could start a family. Touring houses and browsing listings was more than just planning. It was building a vision of our life together. We kept our weekends flexible. Sometimes she'd stay at my place. Other times I'd stay at hers. It was a healthy balance of closeness and space, and it gave us time to enjoy the final months of our independent lives before joining them. Then something began to shift. Around 4 months out from the wedding, Jennifer's behavior began changing in subtle ways. At first, it was easy to chalk up to stress. Her work, the wedding plans, it all added up. She started spending more time at her place, citing piles of schoolwork that needed catching up. She also expressed how overwhelming the wedding preparations had become. It all sounded reasonable. I took her at her word. But little by little, she began bowing out of more of our shared plans. She'd mention new school obligations, tight deadlines, or unexpected responsibilities, explanations that seemed plausible, especially knowing how seriously she took her job. But what began to concern me wasn't just the missed weekends. It was the fading effort. The same woman who used to move mountains to spend time with me now seemed to be phasing me out of her routine. Still, I tried to be understanding. I offered to help lighten her load, whether with her teaching tasks, running errands, or tackling wedding chores, but she insisted she had it all handled. That sense of us that had once defined our relationship started to feel like it was slipping away, replaced by an emotional distance I couldn't ignore or explain. And then her communication began to shift in ways that were impossible to overlook. Jennifer used to be the kind of person who stayed in touch constantly, sending thoughtful messages, quick updates, and playful jokes that always made her presence feel warm and reassuring, even from a distance. But over time, her communication changed. Her texts grew infrequent and robotic, lacking the familiar ease and affectionate tone that once made me look forward to hearing from her. Our phone calls shifted too. They became brief, focused more on coordinating plans than sharing meaningful moments. It often felt like her mind was elsewhere during these conversations, distracted, busy, or eager to hang up without much explanation. After a few weeks of this new pattern, a quiet but persistent sense of distance began to grow between us. The woman I was engaged to, the person I had imagined a future with, seemed to be slipping away. Jennifer, once the emotional center of my world and my closest confidant, now seemed consumed with other things, too preoccupied to maintain the intimacy we once shared. I brought it up gently, asking if work or the stress of wedding planning was getting to her. She waved off my concerns, saying everything was just hectic right now but would calm down soon. I wanted to believe her, but the disconnect between her words and her actions only deepened my doubts. Then I started noticing things on social media, pictures from parties, group outings, events she hadn't mentioned to me. When I asked about them, she'd offer casual explanations, spontaneous work events, impromptu get-togethers with friends while I was busy. Her answers were always plausible, but the frequency and secrecy of it all didn't align with the story she was telling me. And as her enthusiasm for spending time together continued to fade, it became harder to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Everything unraveled one Friday evening, about 3 months before our wedding date. I got off work early and decided to surprise her with takeout from her favorite place, hoping the gesture might bring back some spark. I showed up at her house around 7 p.m., only to find the driveway empty and the house dark. I still had the key she'd given me, so I let myself in, figuring she'd be home soon. I called her cell to see when she'd be back or if we needed to shift plans. She answered, a little breathless, with noise in the background that suggested she was somewhere crowded. When I asked where she was, she said she'd had to rush out of town because of a sudden family emergency. Her aunt in Springfield had been hospitalized, and she'd driven out right after work to be with her relatives. Her explanation made sense. Emergencies happen, and I told her I hoped everything would be okay. She thanked me, said she'd keep me updated, and added that she wasn't sure when she'd be back. I didn't tell her I was in her house while we spoke. Something about her tone gave me pause, but I chalked it up to stress. I didn't leave right away. Traffic was heavy, and part of me hoped she'd call with more news. I ate alone, the food now cold, and as the night wore on, I decided to stay. There was no pressing reason to go home, and if she came back unexpectedly, I wanted to be there. And if something else was going on, something she hadn't told me, I needed to see it for myself. I settled on the couch, pulled a blanket over myself, and tried to sleep. But without her, the house felt unfamiliar. Too quiet, too still. I dozed intermittently, checking my phone each time I stirred, hoping for a message that never came. By midnight, I was fully awake, uneasy. If she truly was at a hospital with family, wouldn't she have sent at least a quick update? From midnight to 3 a.m., time dragged. I kept glancing at my phone, hoping it would light up with some reassurance. But instead, something else happened, something that changed everything. At exactly 3 a.m., I heard the front door unlock. That familiar sound had always meant she was home. I stood up and stepped into the hallway. When she saw me, she froze. The color drained from her face, her body stiffened, and she didn't say a word. She looked completely caught off guard, like someone exposed in a moment they never expected to be found out. Then a man's voice called from outside the door. "Babe, who's that?" His tone was casual, unaware of the tension just inside. In that instant, everything I had been trying not to believe became clear. Jennifer hadn't gone to Springfield. She wasn't with family. She had spent the night with someone else, a man who felt comfortable enough to call her babe. That kind of closeness doesn't come out of nowhere. The woman I was about to marry had lied about where she was, who she was with, and likely about far more than I had realized. I couldn't speak. I stood there, stunned, trying to absorb the reality in front of me. Jennifer didn't move either. She was caught, trapped between me and the man still outside, visibly scrambling for a way to explain the unexplainable. But there was no way out. Her silence, her expression, the whole scene said it all. She wore a dress I'd never seen before, sleek, revealing, the kind of outfit meant for a night out, not a hospital visit. From the sound of it, they'd been out partying. The man behind her was still waiting, unaware of the emotional wreckage waiting to hit. And in that moment, I understood the truth. The relationship I had trusted, the life I had been building with her, it had all been an illusion. The woman who had repeatedly declined time together, always pointing to job stress and family obligations, had actually been concealing a romantic involvement with someone else. Her claims of being overwhelmed or emotionally exhausted were nothing more than a facade, masking the hours she spent with another man. When the truth finally surfaced, it struck with undeniable force. What made it worse was the careful, methodical web of falsehoods she had spun to keep her secret buried. This wasn't a lapse in judgment or a momentary mistake. It was a deliberate, sustained betrayal that had unfolded over weeks, if not longer. Meanwhile, I had been envisioning a future with her, mapping out wedding details and building a life grounded in promises that, I now realized, had never been sincere. I didn't wait for daylight to make a decision. I had no interest in hearing justifications, dissecting her motivations, or weighing the viability of forgiveness. What I had witnessed could not be disputed, and no explanation would change that reality. Quietly and deliberately, I gathered my things from her place, no longer a space I could call home. As I moved toward the exit, she reached out in panic, her hand grasping for mine, but I stepped aside, unwilling to let her touch rewrite the truth. She began to speak behind me, probably scrambling to offer some rationalization or plea. But I had no patience left for her version of events, no interest in salvaging something built on fiction. The man she had been seeing, a complete stranger to me, stood nearby, visibly uneasy, his face clouded with discomfort. Whether he fully understood the consequences of his involvement or the extent of the damage he'd helped cause, I couldn't tell. I passed him in silence. That was the moment I accepted without question, that the wedding would never happen. The relationship I had poured so much into was over. The woman I had planned to share my life with was, in truth, someone I never truly knew at all. In the days that followed, Jennifer became relentless in her attempts to reconnect. She called at all hours, sent lengthy messages filled with contradictions, and even appeared uninvited at my home and workplace. But her words rang hollow. Her explanations shifted constantly, from insisting it was just a friendship, to claiming she was emotionally lost, to describing a situation that had spun out of control. Yet no version of her story could reconcile the clear signs, the supposed family emergencies, the growing distance between us, the intimate language she shared with a man who openly called her babe. None of it aligned with the reality she had tried to present. This wasn't a case of crossed boundaries or poor judgment. It was an intentional choice to live a double life while continuing to walk with me toward a marriage she knew would be built on lies. She tried to minimize the gravity of what had happened, suggesting we could move past it, that things would settle after the wedding. She promised to end things with the other man, to prove her loyalty. But my mind was already made up. The extent of her deceit required a level of manipulation I could never overlook. To invest in a shared future while living a hidden one revealed a side of her I could never accept. Calling off the engagement came with its own challenges. We had to contact vendors, notify guests, cancel bookings, and return gifts we'd already received. Each step was a reminder of the life I had envisioned, now dismantled by her decisions. I was also left with the engagement ring, once a symbol of genuine commitment, now reduced to a painful memory. Eventually, I brought it back to the jeweler and exchanged it for a watch, a practical item to mark time and serve as a quiet reminder that walking away had been the right choice, however much it hurt. The logistical fallout was difficult, but the emotional toll ran deeper. Being betrayed by someone you trusted with your future leaves lasting scars. I turned to therapy to untangle what had happened, to understand how I could have missed the signs so completely. With guidance, I came to realize that her actions were not a reflection of my shortcomings as a partner, but rather an exposure of who she truly was. Some people are adept at compartmentalizing their lies, weaving them so seamlessly into daily life that even those closest to them don't see the truth, especially when the lies come dressed as work obligations or family concerns. That experience taught me an important distinction. Not all relationship problems are created equal. Some can be addressed with effort and communication. But others, like the kind of deception Jennifer practiced, stem from flaws in character that no amount of talking can fix. What she did wasn't a misstep. It was a sustained betrayal, the kind that corrodes trust from the inside out. Even if I hadn't discovered it when I did, the truth would have eventually surfaced, and our marriage would have collapsed under its weight. Now, when I remember the night I heard her key turning in the lock at 3 a.m., I feel more relief than sorrow. That key, once a symbol of shared space and intimacy, became the instrument that opened the door to reality. When she walked in that night, everything changed. But in that shift came clarity. Had I married her without knowing the truth, the damage would have gone far deeper than the heartbreak I experienced. Sometimes, the most defining moments in life arrive in the smallest increments, between the click of a lock and the realization of who truly stands before you. That night, I came to terms with the fact that the woman I intended to marry was not the person I had loved. The pain was undeniable, but the truth freed me. This is where our story ends. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If this story spoke to you, feel free to explore more content on this channel. Take care.